This video is to help graph equations when there's a stretch factor and there's an HK without using your calculator. So I'm going to show you a few graphs, one of each of the main types, and what the stretch factor does, and where do we even start with graphing this. So first one we're going to graph is a parabola with a stretch factor that is -1/2. So that's the equation we're going to be graphing first. So it says -1/2 times the quantity x minus 2 squared minus 4. So I know it's going to be a parabola because this exponent is a 2, so that's going to be like a U shape. And I can find my HK point. It's the opposite of this number, so +2, and I keep this number the same. So this is my HK, and that means it's going to be my vertex for a parabola. So I'm going to start by graphing that. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Ooh, we barely fit that in there. So that's where I'm going to start from. And then on a parabola, we're going to use our parent graph, which is y equals x squared. That's the parent graph, or the basic type of a parabola. And basically, to find these patterns, we're just plugging in points. So if I plug in points for x and y, let's just do the -2 to +2. Okay, and what values we would get if we plugged those in. -2 squared would give me a +4. -1 squared is +1. 0 squared, I would get a 0. 1 squared is 1. 2 squared is 4. So I'm just going to transform these basically into directions, and if they were negatives, I'm going to make them, if they're negatives on the x's, that means I'm going to go to the left, and if they're positive x's, that means I'm going to go to the right. And if any of these were negative, that means I would go down, but they're all positive. So I'm just going to kind of change it into arrows, is what I kind of used in my class. So I'm going to go to the left 2 and up 4, left 1, up 1. This one's just going to be your HK point. I'm going to go to the right 1 and up 1, right 2, up 4. Okay, so this is just kind of the pattern with parabolas, and we just got that from plugging in points -2 to +2 into the parent equation, and this transformed, if it was a negative, that means, well, what direction is that really on the graph? So now I'm just going to use this as if there's no stretch factor. This is what the points would be, how I would use it. So let's plot those points. I'm going to use purple, actually. Maybe you'll see that a little better. So put that back here. Here's our HK point. And so from our HK point, if this was just that graph with no stretch factor, or a stretch factor of 1, I would do exactly what it says down here. However, my stretch factor is negative, and my stretch factor is a 1/2 as well. So actually, I think I'm going to have to move this writing I wrote a little bit. So let me just rewrite this down here. -1/2 x minus 2 squared minus 4, and our HK is 2, -4. Okay, because my parabola is going to go right where this writing was. All right, so it's really important to kind of memorize these patterns. And if you can't memorize it, you're just plugging in these numbers into your basic equation. So here's our HK point again. Now, using our pattern, we know our stretch factor is -1/2. So negative means it's going to open down, and 1/2 is it's going to be wider. So that's kind of what we know our graph should look like just based on this number here. So from my vertex, or from my HK point, I'm going to go to the left 2. The numbers down here stay the same. The numbers on the left and right stay exactly the same. It's the up and down numbers that are going to be changed if there's a stretch factor. Okay, so all of these numbers are going to be different since there's a stretch factor on the right. But my left 2, that's going to stay the same. Now, instead of going up 4 to plot my next point, here's where I would have plotted if it's a normal parabola, right there. Now, I'm going to take this number, I'm supposed to travel up 4, and I'm going to multiply it by -1/2. I'm multiplying that by my stretch factor. So half of 4 is a 2, and now instead of going up 4, I'm going to go down because of that negative, and I'm going down 2 with my new numbers. So let's see, let me maybe rewrite that over here. So I'm going to go left 2, that part stays the same, but now I'm going to go down 2 because I took half of this 4 and I went the opposite direction because it's negative. So from here I'm going to go left 2, down 2, and that's really my point. Okay. Next I'm going to go to the left 1. That stays the same. Now I normally would go up 1, so I'm going to do +1 times the -1/2 because that's my stretch factor, and so that means it's going to be a negative. Half of 1 is 1/2. Alright, so now I'm going to go to the left one for my HK and only down a half point. We'll erase that old one up here. Okay, so this HK point, this 0, 0, that means it's just, now I'm at my HK point again, so there's nothing to do there. Now I'm going to go, my next thing says to the right one, which I still want to do that, but then it says up 1. So this number, this up and down number, this y needs to be multiplied by my stretch factor because that's how it's being changed. So negative 1/2 times positive 1 will be down, or negative 1/2 again. So now I'm going to go from my center point, from my HK, to the right one and down a half instead of normal. Again, this would be normal if there was no stretch factor added. Last point says to do left 2, so that part's going to stay this, or sorry, right 2, that stays the same. I would go up 4, but positive 4 times my stretch factor, which is negative 1/2, is going to be negative or down 2 instead. So from my center point, from my HK, I'm going to go right 2 and down 2. All right, and I'm just going to connect these. And there's my parabola that has a stretch factor of negative, so it opens down, and 1/2. It would have been a little skinnier without a stretch factor. This makes it a little wider. It's hard to tell on my graph, and also because it's only a half smaller versus, you know, like 1/4 or 1/9 or something like that. All right, so there's the parabola. Let's erase that. And now we're going to do the same thing with another type of graph. Let's use a cubic next. All right, again, you can check these, check these on your calculator once you've tried it first. All right, so let's scoot up a little. So now we're going to do a cubic. So here's our equation we're going to try with our cubic. We have a positive 2x plus 4 cubed plus 1. And I know it's a cubic because of this 3 right here, so it's going to have a different shape than that parabola did. It's going to look like an S, kind of like this squiggly shape, okay? This meaning that was the center. So let's first of all figure out the HK point. So HK is the opposite of this number in the parentheses, so negative 4, and then this one stays the same.